Rachel from Accounts is back, this time with a plan to make us all safer. Writing in the Daily Telegraph newspaper today, the former Bank of England economist, has been celebrating the government's decision to increase defence spending to 2.5% of our national income. This is all at the expense of foreign aid. So it didn't take long, did it, for this bunch of woke progressives to discard their humanitarian impulse. A few months in power, and people living in grinding poverty in Africa, Asia and beyond can go whistle for that new road they need, the water tower or the urgent medicine. This is what always happens with the woke left. Their virtue signalling, their moralising, their progressive posturing never quite matches their actions. On this occasion, by accident, they happen to have made the right decision. Whilst foreign aid can do very important work, particularly child health, education and disaster relief, a huge amount is essentially a fraud on the British people. Millions of pounds, for example, of UK foreign aid went missing in Malawi in the 90s, unearthed in the so-called Cashgate scandal. Thousands have gone to Bangladesh Agricultural University to study shrimps. Smells a bit fishy to me. We've also completely and ridiculously exported woke ideology and paid for the pleasure. Last December, the Foreign Office paid a contractor almost £10 million to support accountability and inclusion in war-ravaged Congo. There was a fund to prevent gender-based disinformation in Kenya, and a £30 million budget was set aside for enhancing gender outcomes in Nepal in a contract running until 2030. We've spent £500,000 on electric vans for Albanian prisons to save the planet. £114 million has gone to India for inclusive green enterprises. This is India, folks, with a growth rate of 8.2%. They are an economic powerhouse and we are shoveling money in their direction. They've got growth of 8.2%. What's ours? 0.1 under the financial genius that is Rachel Reeves. Now, it's my understanding that the Chancellor pushed back on plans to increase defence spending because even though our Rach is not the economist she pretends to be, she can see that the country is broke. But her political capital is zero, having utterly decimated the economy following last October's catastrophic budget. Well, you and I stopped listening to Rachel Reeves a long time ago, knowing that this charlatan was completely out of her depth, completely dishonest, and ironically, completely unqualified for the job that she promised she was so qualified for. And now it seems that Starmer has stopped listening to his Chancellor as well, and will head to the United States with the peace offering to Donald Trump of higher defence spending. Of course, curtailing corrupt and unethical foreign aid is the right thing to do. It should, though, only be for emergencies like floods and earthquakes, water supply, medicine for kids, that kind of thing. It should be the essentials, not the woke rubbish. But here's the thing, cutting it back, making it more targeted, that's fine. But nobody's fooled that this is what Sir Keir Starmer actually wanted to do. After all, it is Labour who are the ones that condemned the Conservatives for cutting foreign aid a few years ago after the financial hit of that big global disease thing that we had. Even then, Labour were more concerned about the plight of the international community than Brits struggling at home. So I'm not buying this Damascene conversion to common sense on the part of Reeves or Starmer. They have been bounced into this move by Donald Trump, who we keep being told is a terrible person, but who since entering office has exposed the wasting of billions of US taxpayers' dollars on US aid programs. He has codified the reality of biological sex in America's public institutions, and he's days away from presiding over the end of the war in Ukraine, which has cost far too many lives and had economic and logistical implications which have affected all of us via the spiralling cost of energy and food in particular. The war needed to end, and under Trump it will, like he said he would. And of course, he's apparently a bad person. Do keep up. Donald Trump has also quite rightly bullied European leaders to put their money where their mouth is when it comes to global defence, having dined out on the largesse of the US taxpayer for far too long. Why should Germans have a better standard of living because people in Wyoming are paying taxes to keep Eastern European citizens safe? Make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense. But to be fair to Starmer, at least he's made this move. He has done the right thing, albeit under colossal diplomatic pressure from our number one ally. But I have to tell you, I wanted to throw up into my cornflakes this morning when I read Rachel Reeves' article in The Telegraph. By the way, we can't even be sure that it was Rachel Reeves that wrote it, given the fact that anything published about her or in her name hitherto has been swiftly disowned by her. The LinkedIn profile, the erroneous statement about wage growth, the essay in an economic journal, the Who's Who entry. Oh, I didn't write that. That was an assistant. My office have corrected it. That's all we hear from Rachel Reeves. This latest Telegraph article is probably just another work in progress, with more rewrites coming than the latest James Bond film script. Most of the article made my stomach turn, starting with the first line: a strong economy needs a strong national defence. Do me a favour, this is a woman who has taken us from the top of the G7 for growth, under those terrible Tories, to borderline recession. For her to talk about maintaining a strong economy is like Count Dracula talking about maintaining the nation's blood supplies. This article is basically 600 words of gaslighting, in which this famous queen of customer complaints and mass brewer of PG tips gives us a history lesson and starts banging on about Winston Churchill and the importance of national security. Well, as Winston Churchill will tell you, if only he were here, you need money for national security. Labour have managed to cook the books and shift money from one department to another, but it's only with actual growth and national income that you can buy the tanks, the troops, purchase the helicopters, do the training, the equipment, the ammunition, the kit, you name it. It all takes money. And you need growth for that. But instead, we've got a Chancellor in Rachel Reeves who has talked non-stop about growth whilst shrinking the economy. So if a strong economy equates to the state of our defence, then Vladimir Putin might as well send a few ships in our direction right now. Taking Birmingham or Manchester will make taking Crimea look like a walk in the park. Thanks to CV fraudster Reeves, we're getting poorer, not richer as a nation, and therefore more vulnerable to an attack from overseas. That's why the economy is so important, and why it shouldn't have been vandalised in October, with a business-hating tax raid on employers, a horror show of red tape which will cost companies more and act as a disincentive to hire. And that's why it shouldn't have been vandalised with a vicious tax raid on farmers and the punishment beating of pensioners, who the Labour Party seem to think are all rich, fat cat Tories. They are not. And Kemi Badenoch was right today to point out that inflation will drastically reduce this so-called boost in military spending, not to mention the Chagos Islands surrender and the upwards of £18 billion, of which the cost is likely to come out of this new defence uplift. And don't talk to me about national security when Labour scrapped the only deterrent to stop the illegal boat crossings in the Channel, the Rwanda plan. What's the message here? Make the world a safer place abroad whilst keeping our own borders wide open, at huge cost to our economy, our society and our national security. But that's the twisted logic of this new Labour administration. Keeping you safer by exposing you to danger, stopping immigration by increasing it, growing the economy by shrinking it, and boosting spending on defence. With so many caveats and loopholes, we might wind up with less than that with which we started. I'll be honest, the more I think about it, a foreign invasion becomes more attractive by the day.